DYCD, Barbershop Talks, Fatherhood Matters, Diverse. Hey yo, these is Barbershop Talks where the fathers pop off, brag about relationships and argue about sports. Every topic's a favorite, is how we plot course toward changes. It all begins with dialogue and patience. Barbershop Talks, so let's chop it up, boys. Barbershop Talks, so let's chop it up, boys. Barbershop Talks, so let's chop it up, boys. Chop it up, boys. Chop it up, boys. It's Barbershop Talks, so let's chop it up, boys. It's Barbershop Talks, so let's chop it up, boys. It's Barbershop Talks, so let's chop it up.
Good evening, everyone. We're coming on with another Barbershop Talk. Real exciting conversation today. We're going to be talking to many of the father figures and father leads of different organizations and different groups and different things that are all about fatherhood. And we're going to talk about some of the events and things that happen across this month of June. You know, we oftentimes, Father's Day is usually one of the smallest, excited days, and dads don't really get to get much. You get a pair of socks, a tie, and some underwear because that's what we normally get. But we also have a gold opportunity because it was really special, especially for us men in fatherhood field this year, because it was the first time ever we did something on Juneteenth, and how that played into all the work that we've done with fatherhood. It's a major accomplishment and something that's really excited. And once again, a lot of things tied in on that particular Sunday that we did around fatherhood. Now we brought in the discussions and understanding and the importance of Juneteenth to the work that we're doing and the things that we're doing and some things that we need to move forward on. And hopefully we're going to have a great conversation and great talk. And hopefully we really want you to be a part of the conversation, because this particular barbershop, we need to hear from the general public, because you have a very important key factor in the work that we're going to do, especially in your particular community. So I'm going to bring on my co-host and introduce them. So hey Jerry, how you doing? I'll bring you on first, Jerry.
Hey, what's going on? It's always great to be in the barbershop. As you can see, I got my little beard thing going, so I want to get my shape up nice and fresh. I love all the stuff that's been happening around the realm of fatherhood. And that weekend for me, it was particularly exciting. It was a trifecta. So not only did we had Juneteenth and fatherhood, but it was also my birthday that following Tuesday. So just to celebrate that all in the same space, I appreciate y'all. It was really, really amazing. And I'm one of those people, I like to separate things. And so I had my moments where Juneteenth was just like really helping. We talked about it as a family, and then just the way just being loved on and a father, and then loving on other men as fathers, and just championing them and the work that we've done, especially for the conference that was done, Affirming Fatherhood, shouting you out again for that, Scott. And just building that whole thing out, that was definitely a great way to lead into like another celebration of life. And for that, I want to just take a step back and just really be excited about this conversation with a bunch of great men and fathers, as well as the tools that we all about to receive and give to everybody listening. So I'm excited for that. Always love being in the barbershop. And I'm gonna give it over to my big brother, Mike Bobbitt. How you doing today?
I'm good, Jerry. I'm good, Scott. It's good to be back in the barbershop. We're no stranger to talking about responsible fatherhood in the barbershop. And I'm glad that we have the different men and women that we have today to have this conversation. I'm thinking back, it's been a busy month. So I'm thinking back to Father's Day, and I'm thinking back to Juneteenth, but I'm just thinking on so many things that we've done this month. So some of the folks that we're going to chop it up and talk with today have been in these discussions with us many times before, including earlier in June. So let's not forget, we did a whole day affirming fatherhood on June 2nd. And if those workshops haven't been posted yet, stay tuned. They will be posted to YouTube. And I think the design of that was beautiful. So I want to talk about it just a little bit. This is from 11 a.m. to 9 at night. And the first portion was for folks like our colleagues and friends and guests today that do the work. They go out in the streets and they open up their offices and they advocate for dads, and to be able to have a steel sharpened steel set of conversations about how can we stay strong and continue to advance this work? And what I love is important is that was by 5 o'clock, we had wrapped that up. And by 5:30, we kicked off a whole other gear where we had dads from the community leading workshops for other dads in the community. And that was beautiful. We could have done a full day just on that front too. But I think the power of having folks who volunteer their time or work for organizations that uplift dads, we needed to get there. But the day would not have been complete if we hadn't have gotten directly with dads and hear their concerns and problem solve together. So like even before we got to Father's Day, we were talking about fatherhood. I'm glad we did that. And part of why I'm glad we did that is I felt like I heard some comments and energy before we got to Juneteenth. And I just mean in the community. I don't mean at DYC or at the programs, but like, oh man, Juneteenth is important, but you know, it's distracting that it's happening at the same time as Father's Day. Dads need to be recognized for the roles they play. So I was glad that for our part, we've really tried to spend the whole month uplifting dads, the whole month uplifting dads. And that brings us to tonight. We're spending tonight uplifting dads, but I don't want to take anything away from Juneteenth. You know, here's what I want to say about Juneteenth. I think it's an important cultural and historical event to recognize and phenomenon to recognize, but I'd never call it a celebration. And I'm glad that we haven't been calling it a celebration. To me, it is a painful but an instructive reminder that following the Emancipation Proclamation, it took over 2 years for people who were free to be told that they were free. As a person that works in government, I look at that as a instruction or a life lesson. How do we make institutions be responsive and responsible and accountable to the people that we serve? We can't afford to wait 2 years to let people know there's a fatherhood initiative we have. We have to let people know today. Come and get services, come and get help, and we're there for you. So I hope other people are receiving that message. You know, it's fine when there's uplift and if there's song and there's other things being done, but you know, to me that was a takeaway. And my daughter's 13 now, and that was really the nature of my discussion with her. As much as we sort of collapsed Father's Day and Juneteenth, we have to be accountable to one another, and we have to learn from the past, or you know, what is it? People who don't pay attention to the mistakes of the past are doomed to repeat them. So you know, what better way to invest the next 2 hours than to hold ourselves accountable and talk to colleagues and friends and experts about how to support one another who are dads, and everyone else in the city who are dads, to make this generation get you know, up on our shoulders, get to where they need to get to.
And Mike, you know, me, you, and Jerry we can just talk ourselves, but it's so powerful. Juneteenth and men, and what men could have done, and even things of today, how, and even today, people know what's happening today, but even today is a very significant day. That if you're not here, you should be online somewhere getting ready to take care of some real other business that's going on. If you understand what I'm talking about, but we have an obligation to step up in our community, and we have to be able to be vigilant and present. And hopefully that's some of the guys that we're going to have on. Uh, and let me tell you, the next person I'm going to talk about, if it wasn't for this beautiful young lady who helps me out at work and make sure that all this stuff gets done, because whenever I don't get done, she reminds me, Scott, you know, we got to take care of business too. So, you know, with all the work done, we always have a dynamite, strong woman behind us somewhere, helping us, supporting us, taking care of us, making sure we get what we're doing, sometimes slapping us aside the head and saying, yeah, get this done. But here's my backbone person I want to introduce, Allison Walker Basden, who takes care of all things for me. She's the number one, no, she's number 3 lady in my life, okay? Because I got 2 others ahead of her, but she knows she takes care of me at work, and she does a lot of great things for me. So, Allison, here I want to. If I had some roses, I pass them through the TV to you, but maybe tomorrow I'll get you some roses.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you again for inviting me. Scott said me and him are a team. We help each other out. We live and breathe fatherhood. We are fatherhood. at DYCD. And for those who don't know me, my name is Allison Walker Basden, program manager at DYCD for the Fatherhood Initiative. I want to just kind of piggyback a little bit off of what you said, Scott, in regards to us, working together and doing this. Yeah, it's been all of this time. I don't know how long you've had this barbershop going, but this is the first invite I've gotten to the barbershop since it started. I hear big things, and I want to just, kind of be here, sit in the cut, get in where I can fit in. Kudos and I agree with everything that everybody is saying so far in regards to Juneteenth and what all that has been done for June. June is always a big month for Scott and I with the Fatherhood Initiative, where we always try to honor the dads that go to our programs. It's big for me personally too. Like Jerry said, he had a birthday. I have a lot of birthdays in June, back to back to back. But it's always special when it comes to the Fatherhood Initiative, where we always honor the dads who attend our programs, and just seeing the growth and seeing the smiles on their faces with their kids. And each event we had this year was a little bit different with the Affirming Fatherhood conference, which was a lot of work in the beginning, but we pulled it off. It was awesome. And I'd love to do that again. We, like Scott said a little while ago, we, in addition, took the dads out for a Mets game and for a barbecue, which was awesome. So we want to keep up and do these things on a regular basis. Again, like I said, to just congratulate these dads and, for all the hard work that they do and everything that they go through. So again, I'm here. I'm thankful to be here. I'm going to just kind of like I said.
No, we got some work for you to do, Allison.
You got some stuff for me to do?
Yeah, we got some braiding. You got some braids that got to be tightened up in here also. So
wait, and then I feel a little like when my kids, because I have two sons, and I would take them to the barbershop if their dad, my husband, couldn't take them. So I feel kind of like this is not really the barbershop that I would go to, because I wouldn't talk. When I was a little girl and would go with my three brothers, I was the only girl with three older brothers, and would go with my mom. I would go because I wanted that lollipop that they used to give, the barbers used to give you at the end. So when I got to have my own kids and see that they don't have these lollipops anymore, I'm like, whatever. So I'll see what I can get from this barbershop.
All right, now the pressure is on. We got to give out virtual lollipops somehow.
Yeah.
Is there icon for that yet? No.
We're gonna have to write what David was saying. There's some other things that need to be added to Zoom, so we got to add lollipops to that too. Before you move on, though, I want to bookend your acknowledgement of Allison. Allison has been with DYC's been with DYC for a long time, but been with DYC's Fatherhood Initiative for a long, long time, and the passion and the high regard and the quality of the work that she brings to everyone, I just want to acknowledge. And I appreciated the dig earlier. Like, you've been doing this for a while. This is the first time I've been in the barbershop. We talked specifically about you, and we said, all right, for Father, we need Allison to be in the bar. Every host said that. I hope you know that. We need you in this conversation tonight. So I'm glad that you've agreed to participate.
Awesome. Thanks.
Just taking care of some housekeeping before we get started. I wanted to ask my engineer to bring up the UR code. And Mike, you want to talk about this UR code, this survey we want people to take?
Sure. So if you can, Scott, also bring your mic a little closer. I was having a little trouble hearing you. So I don't want to lose anyone's attention. We wanted to bring this up right away. And I think when we close and land the plane, we'll bring this back. We want to let you know about every 3 years, DYC does a really robust, intensive, widespread community needs assessment. And we want to know specifically in all the neighborhoods where we target our federal funded work, what are the highest priority needs that New Yorkers are facing, particularly folks with low household income who really need some of our services. So you will perhaps, as the summer rolls on, see folks in the streets. We've got teams, 41 teams, about 300 or so volunteers. So you'll probably be seeing them in July and August and September, canvassing in the streets. But for the first time ever, we make it super easy on everyone. If you're a New Yorker and you scan that QR code that you see there at the top right, You can do the community needs assessment from the comfort of your home or from the convenience of on your phone. And it really only takes 10 minutes. So we wanted to put it up here because, frankly, if you're watching this discussion right now and you have the bandwidth and the attention, you could do the survey right now while we're still talking. And when we go to Q&A later on in the session, we'd certainly love to hear from you about it. And we will put the QR code up again later on. Everyone, if you live in the city of New York, is welcome to do it. So, we'd be telling our fatherhood providers, other providers, every client that DYCD is serving, or frankly, any New Yorker that any city agency is serving, you're invited to let us know what you think are the most pressing needs in your community. And that's that. So once you click on the QR code, you see it's pretty self-explanatory. Shouldn't even take 10 minutes. Won't take more than 10 minutes for sure. And we thank you for helping raise this up. The more the merrier, the more representative we can be of what different New Yorkers and different neighborhoods need, all the better. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. And once again, I just want to say this is your opportunity to have a voice in what you want in your community. There's another opportunity to be able to say what you need or what you want in your community. So we want to really invite everybody to push that, to make sure your kids, because I think it's kids as young as 12, 13 can actually still do the survey. I'm not sure what the bottom age limit is, but we want to hear from everybody. That's what our job is at DYCD. We're trying to hear from the community, hear from you of what services that we can provide for you or what services you like. So this is an opportunity for you to be heard. So we really welcome everybody, and we want to push that. Tell your house of worship, your friends, your neighbors, wherever you go, this opportunity to get it in, get your word in. So we're going to go ahead and jump in. We're going to start introducing some of our guests that we have, and we have a number of great guests. It's funny that these are most of the guys that we're going to be introducing tonight are guys who we have our own kind of barbershop. Sometimes we just get on the phone, or when we're in person, we get together, or we get on a computer and we talk. I mean, we really have some serious talks about a lot of different things, and we share information. And I know a lot of times people hear about me, but here are guys who really support the work that I do, who make sure that things that are going around the fatherhood world in New York City are really rolling. And some of them are doing some amazing things in their community. So I want to start off, and I want to introduce my brother Q, because he has done some amazing things and things that he's doing around the city. He's executive director, co-executive director at Connect. He's been in the field doing the work. I mean, he's one of the guys who's been in the streets doing the work for many, many years. And Q, I want to cue you up and let you talk about, your the parent pledge that we did on the steps in Brooklyn. I was there supporting you and all the other guys that were there and ladies that were there. So Q, I'm going to turn over to you to do the introduction and let's talk about what Connect had done throughout this month in June.
All right, thanks, Scott. Thank you all for inviting me again to the barbershop. And Allison, you always have a seat here. So, Quentin Walcott, I'm the executive director of Connect. And Connect is a domestic violence and gender violence prevention organization in New York City. And we're in all 5 boroughs. And Connect will be 20 next year. So that's another milestone for us. And I've been doing this work for probably a little bit longer than Connect, and work with fathers and on the issue of domestic violence and what role men and boys can play in that. And our work generally is really about, interrupting violence and preventing violence in communities and transforming communities where there's violence and transforming that into peace. And our role and our job doing that, what's made Connect really unique is, one, the prevention piece, and for doing it for so long, and also engaging men in that process for equally as long, because that was the strategy that a lot of times when there's violence starts with the victim survivor. And that's not the starting point, right? That's the reaction point. And folks who are doing the harm and the violence should be the starting point. And then the things that support violence in our communities. So that's looking at systems, looking at, the intersections of violence, which is race, class, gender, and all the other isms play a huge role in, promoting and making sure that violence continues. So our work is that, to entry point into violence prevention is through intimate partner violence. But which brings us to why I'm on this roundtable, why I'm on this barbershop roundtable, and my work over the years has been, men should be more involved in interrupting violence. And, one of the hard pills we have to swallow is that men are really at the center of all forms of violence, right? So that's an honest thing we have to look at, but we have to be honest about it so we can transform it and change it and give men and fathers and father figures and young men the things that they need to transform. Which brings us to Father's Day and what June means, for my work individually and for my organization. This past June 16th, the first pledge we had was the 16th, and this is our 13th annual Father's Day pledge against violence. And, we have grown even into that, because initially it was the Father's Day pledge against domestic violence. And we saw that just like, other forms of violence throughout the city don't exist by themselves, right? They feed into other forms of violence. So we expanded it to gun violence, community violence, violence in the home, in the workplace, and in schools, right? So it only makes sense that we make that connection and that we look at what role men can play in preventing that from happening. Even though we may be the ones doing harm, we still need to heal from that. And then we could also be an example to other people who might be struggling on that spectrum of violence. And we can play a role and model and show that we can do things differently. So it was our 13th annual Father's Day pledge. We started it, right here in New York City. It's in over 55 cities now. So we came back to Brooklyn, and for the first time in Brooklyn, rather than City Hall steps. And it was a beautiful day, beautiful event. And it's the first time in 2 years we've been in person because of COVID. So it was a great event. Scott came out, a lot of different organizations and people. And, the key thing is that there's majority men there, and not just men around gun violence, but men around the issue of domestic violence, the hardest issue for us to galvanize around and look at because of the stigma connected to it, right? If you're a man, and I get this all the time, you're a man, talk about domestic violence, not the question always is, when did you stop being abusive in your relationship? It doesn't necessarily mean that, any man should care about this issue, particularly when there's violence against women and girls, because we are linked together, right? We're not separate from each other. We share the planet together. We share our homes and our communities together. So we should be, really engaged in that piece. So that's what the pledge does. It brings people together, particularly men, father figures, mentors, whatever relationship you are in a male, and you're touching a young person's life in a positive way, or even even if you're in your struggle, because that's what it's really about.
And Q, I was just saying, Q, hopefully before the end, you can pull up the pledge. I don't know if we can see it. Yeah, because and then maybe toward the end we'll see how many people we can do the pledge. Some way we can all see it and do the pledge.
And one last thing, Scott. So thanks for coming out, and many other people. And I'm sure your colleagues and so forth were there as well. But it's a very powerful day where we had fathers and father figures speaking to their work, because we're trying to plug people into the different programs throughout the city and throughout the country, really, and talking about what the pledge means to them and why that's important. And the second thing that we did was it's grown not only from the New York City local pledge, but to a national pledge. And on Saturday, the day before Father's Day, we had the national virtual pledge. Very, very powerful event. We had, speakers, performers, artists who are fathers and father figures. It got really more intimate about their stories and their path to this place where we are now and what needs to happen. So beautiful event. Both that is online and available. If you check out the Connect page on the Facebook page, that is 2 hours, but I guarantee you, once you start it, you will not want to turn it off. Such great presentations and conversations. And I think that's important about today, right? In terms of what should happen. It's, we should be doing the work every single day, which Connect does. I know many of your organizations do as well. And then having these Father's Day or year-end events as a culminating call to action, right? It's not just about an event and everybody getting kudos and fame from it. It's about setting people up, as was the Affirming fatherhood conference, right? It's about telling what the issue is, what we need to do, and plugging people into place, right? And so that's what the Father's Day Pledge is really about. It's a national piece. And, hopefully next year, we'll be able to bring all the cities and all the places that, kind of honor the pledge to Washington, D.C. Mall. So we hope to have everyone come out for that. And, a huge presence of, men and women standing together is a powerful, powerful thing. I just want to say one thing about Juneteenth, right? Acknowledging Juneteenth is so, so important. And like for me, I've always celebrated that or acknowledged that. My family and my, organizing and national work has always been a piece. It's become a big thing here in the East Coast, I would say. Some folks celebrate, but all over the country, we've been having like the Father's Day Pledge along with Juneteenth activities upstate and throughout the country. So I just want to acknowledge that it's important that we do make those connections, right? Because it's about fatherhood, and particularly Black and brown fatherhood is an intersectional issue. It has everything to do with race, right? It has everything to do with class, everything to do with systems, and everything to do with how we are raised and how we kind of are in community with women and girls and mothers and so forth. So I took a lot of time. I apologize.
That's right. I'm pretty sure we got a lot of other people going to speak to, but we really want to give everybody some space to kind of talk, because we're going to jump back in. And one of our goals, even tonight, one of our goals is to build and not take any steps down, but taking this group and once again build off. And Q, you and I kind of talked offline about hopefully how can we do this do a big march, and maybe we can get a couple of buses that go down to Washington, D.C. representing New York. But once again, this group we have now, we can help start working on building off of each other and having a calendar and things so that the whole month we got things planned. So the next brother I want to go to is one of our sister agencies that does a lot of work with us. He invited me to the conference they had about reimagining fatherhood. What would it look like? How can we reimagine it? How can we take off these blinders of what people have said about us as fathers? And what would it look like about reimagining? So I want to bring on Michael Dunbar. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Scott. It's a pleasure to be on the Barbershop. Big fan, been watching you for a minute, and it's like, I appreciate the work that everyone is doing at the Barbershop DYCD. It's great, exceptional work. That's why I had to have you, be a part of my panel on June 17th, but the work that we started at ACS, I'm deputy director for in Brooklyn at Administration for Children's Services, and I'm in charge of what you call court order supervision. These are families who have been part of neglect and abuse petitions in child welfare. And over the years, I have about 25 years experience in doing this work. And unfortunately, the realities that we do see is that oftentimes our fathers are, not acknowledged and being a contributing factor in our homes, and that they're critical to the family functioning, regardless of the relationships between the spouses, or they play a real critical role in the lives of their children. And we want to make sure that we bring the voices of the fathers to the forefront in our work, not letting them be in the background or absent. And when in times of crisis, that's when we start, trying to acknowledge them and seek them out for support. I think that's the wrong approach. So what we have been doing over the years, with my associate commissioner, Mr. Rodney Jackson, and I have a partner in crime, just like Allison is your partner in crime. Monique Thompson is my partner in crime. She's not here right now; she's on vacation. But we hit the ground running, because we want to make sure that when we look at our, working with fathers who are involved in our child welfare systems, we try to understand how we got to this point. And just like Brother Q said, trauma, it didn't just start, it's been longstanding. And so what we have done with our staff over the years is to really, when we meet, whether it's biweekly or quarterly, so we have quarterly meetings to discuss fatherhood plan, fatherhood events plan, what is it that we need to tackle in our organization as it relates to fathers, how are we going to bring them to the forefront, bring them in part of the discussion. we make sure that we ourselves examine what we do to either keep fathers away from our work. And so we challenge ourselves and ask ourselves, what is it that is impacting us from really engaging fathers? And, we talk about transference and countertransference in our work, and how, we're influenced by that and our own experiences with fathers, and it reflects in our work. And so we challenge our staff, when they're making that decision-making or at that decision-making point, when you're making that critical decision, you have to make sure that it's going to be a positive impact on these families, not a negative. Oftentimes it's so easy to look at the negative and lead from there. But I challenge them, we challenge them to look at it from the positive. And so, putting the fathers' voices out there was critical. And one of the turning points for us was a couple of years ago. One of my, male staff, we have been dealing with so many traumas and violence in recent years, from the Trayvon Martin on, to George Floyd. And, my staff came in frustrated, screaming and yelling, and everyone was scared and wondering what was happening, what's going on. And, he just said, I'm tired. I'm just tired. I'm tired. How they look at me, how they treat me. Look at what happened to this brother. And, I called all the brothers and sisters in the room, have a meeting we got to talk about this because it impacts us and it's going to impact our work. And that allowed us to really start saying to ourselves, we need to change the directions we're going as an organization. It starts with Mr. Jackson, myself, and a few other brothers and sisters. Because I want to let it be clear, the work is not done just by brothers. Just like Q said, sisters are part of it and always been part of it, from day one. From the time we start setting sail from, from Africa to the Caribbean, to South America, to the South Carolinas, they have been part of the struggle. And, we have started, having these discussions quarterly, like I said, and we've developed some real talented, staff that, took on the Fatherhood Initiative. And, Scott was part of one of the first launch of our, forums, which was the Emotional Man. That was how it started. We brought Scott in. And, because we go through, there's so many phases of men and especially brothers, things that we are, we don't talk to anyone, but in the barbershop too. You understand? That's the only place of sacredness for us, to really reveal what's really going on with us. And so that had, a lot of people, coming at Scott, all of us, in a positive way though, because we really needed to open up the transference that people had and the counter transference and the myths that they had about the brothers.
It's funny, Mike. Yeah, because I y'all was gonna talk to me after that one. I thought y'all was gonna revoke me from AC.
No way, brother.
Nice.
Everybody loved it because I emailed you back, man.
I know.
Scott, we getting some real good feedback, man. They were loving you, and they were throwing some darts too. But it was a learning moment, and it really changed. I saw the transformation of how our staff, my team, looked at the work. And it really impacts too the decision-making process. When we look at court-involved families and look at the fathers, majority of the cases, just to let you know, are domestic violence cases that are involved in family court. And I really scrutinize with my team. I have a team of excellent managers, all 5 of them. We making sure that we scrutinize every case that comes across our desk when it involves domestic violence. And we want to be fair. We talk about equity across the board. And, sometimes we see that, fathers, who are involved in our child welfare systems, sometimes they have never been spoken to as the cases got into court. Their voices are nowhere across those documents. They're just allegations and then they're there. So, we really challenge our partners who are attorneys known as family court legal services that represents us in court, talking to them, about really rethinking, reimagining how they process these cases and start looking at, were these cases really necessary to be brought forth with absence of the voices of the brothers or fathers, because we're all inclusive. But like you said, Q, it's about classism too, because there are some individuals that are able to, get out of out of our judicial process because of their financial situations. But most of
I don't want to cut you off. I want to get everybody some time in, but also can I put a plug in that I know that you and we talked before about we need to get some more men into the social service field.
Oh, absolutely.
If anybody's out there, they said if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So we need some guys to go to school, get their social work degree, get the MSW, and take on the job at ACS and become an advocate if this is what, but you got to be part of the change agent. You may want, you may say, well, I don't want to do that. I don't like them, but you got to be part of the solution. So you got to be part of it. I know, Mike, we've talked about that before.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and well said.
Absolutely. Mike, you mentioned that too. We are part of agencies that are, unfortunately, contributing to some of the challenges that we are facing in our community, right? But we have to be at the table, like Scott said, to be those change agents. We cannot stay on the front line and complain about it. We got to make sure that we put ourselves in positions so that we could influence that change and influence policy as well. And so, that's what I do. That's what I challenge all, young men that are under me, that are, working for me on my team. Let's get to that table, so that we can actually influence this. And I think that we are seeing that positive outcome here at ACS. So that's how we were able to really plan over since, last year, talking about reimagining fatherhood. That was something to really challenge everyone across the spectrum in child welfare, in our community-based organizations, in the city at large, that we need to rethink about how we think about fathers, and that they are critical, are essential in the family functioning. We see too often, I said it on June 17th on our Reimagining Father Forum, 51% of our children are without their fathers in the home. 51%. That's a large, large number. And they're children of color. What does that say? And how does that impact? And when I speak to, children and speak to fathers, and you see that they want that relationship, we have to make sure that we create a bridge to make that happen. When they come into my office for, visitations, and I think that is, one of the most difficult things I have to witness each and every time, to see fathers come in to see their children in an office for visits. And it's also a blessing to see how they interact and engage. And it's also good to hear fathers express to me directly how they feel and what they're willing to do, and to support their children. And we have to make sure that that continues in our agency, and making sure that we don't stop at just doing events, but really making it part of our daily work, so that it can be often discussed whenever a family comes across our child welfare system, how we could best support them and not keep them wrapped up in the judicial process too long. When I have met with families.
Mike, I know we could.
We could chop it up all day.
Listen, if you don't know anything about this group, this is like a bunch of preachers trying to talk. Because every one of us can have our own hour of what we do. So, but Mike, I appreciate you. So I'm going to go up to Westchester, to my brothers up in Westchester. So my guys I grew up with up in Westchester. So, hey, Professor Donnie, we can go back up to White Plains and maybe we have to go up to Ferris Avenue and get the ball again, right? So I want to introduce Professor Donnie Simmons, who I grew up with up in Westchester. So Donnie, tell us about what's happening up in Westchester.
Hey man, look, first of all, I just want to say thank you to one and all. I'm looking at the screen and people are getting the work in, boy, for real. The grind, the everyday grind. And sometimes I think we miss the forest for the trees. We hear about all this disaster, but we don't really promulgate the good work that's being done on a regular basis. So kudos to everybody who's, getting the work done, doing what we have to do. So by day, I work at Westchester Community College. I'm a college professor. I teach a couple of classes. The focus of the classes that I teach are first-year seminar classes for incoming freshmen, get them adjusted, acclimated to the campus, that whole piece, and but my my other work there is as a director of the Black and Hispanic Male Initiative, BHMI. The goal of that program principally is to engage the young mind, particularly the young brother, brothers of all stripes, to just get them to believe that they can do the work and graduate, right? So the average length of stay for a community college student is 3.5 years. But I set the bar differently. I set the bar where I say to them that our number one goal is to graduate with academic distinction, because when you do that, you open up opportunities. So I almost take a transactional approach to how we get business done. And it's a paradigm shift. Usually it's associative to, judgment and looking at A, B's, and C's from a matter of intelligence. That's not my paradigm. My thing is, it's in your best interest to get that B or an A. It's the best interest to achieve mastering proficiency because you get more money. Don't you want some more money? Would you like some money when you graduate from WCC to parlay over to a 4-year experience or go out into the vocational world? And that paradigm seems to work with our population, because when they can identify with any one of us and see and believe in the authenticity of what we're stating by our example, then they're all in. They're all in. Just to give you an example with regard to BHMI, this year alone, I had a 99% persistent rate, meaning that the individuals that came in the fall, right, stayed with me all the way through the school year. I only had 2 individuals out of 170 that did not matriculate, okay? And we have a 67% rate of students that are in good academic standing with the college, which is triple that of individuals who are not a part of programming. So this is viable in this conversation because I also have my brother Vito here, and I'm gonna pass it to him for a moment in a minute. But principally our work with White Plains Youth Bureau is with the New York Fathering Conference. The New York Fathering Conference has been in effect for about 8 years now. And the whole goal behind that is to engage service providers to try to bring all these professionals together and say, look, you dealing with DSS, we got that. You're dealing with this, we got that sort of thing. But that's intervention. Nothing wrong with intervention. We need to continue that. But I tell you, it hit us this year or last year. And we kind of took a page out of Frederick Douglass, which was, it's easier to build strong children than to fix broken men. And my thing is, if we really want to get that W, right? And I'm all about that W, right, Scott? Because as athletes, you want to get that win. My thing is, let's slow this thing down. Let's slow time down and let's look at the fabric of what it is that we're doing. So what we decided to do was to open up a dialogue with White Plains Public School District, right? We went to the superintendent, we pitched what we wanted to do. He was all in. And what we wanted to do is to set up a leadership academy training in order to get our voice across. We're not going to come at them at a New York fathering thing because they're being like, yo, what's up with this? You know what I mean? We want to come at them from where they're at, right? So we established a 4-tier platform for engagement. The first is financial literacy. Second was career exploration. The third was health and wellness. And the fourth was leadership development. So we had 15 kids on tap, 13 came. All of them said at the end, right? We ran an academy from 8:30 to 2. All of them said that we will tell a friend about this and we want them to participate in this event, in this activity. So we're going to use that as a template. We're going to try to hit the road. We're going to try to go to other local municipalities. And right now, the town of Greenburgh, the Greenburgh Public School District has agreed. I just had a meeting this morning, to host us, and we've also bridged a relationship with all of the county youth bureaus, right? So the director of the county youth bureau is a brother named Ernest McFadden. He opened the door to us, So we're going to take it high, we're going to take it low, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
And Donnie, I just want to, so people understand, this is part of like what Mayor Adams said about working upstream and getting ahead of the thing. And what Donnie and doing a lot of pre-fatherhood work that they're working on up in Westchester. And it was just Friday that you all had your
Yes, it was.
right? Okay.
Yeah. And before I pitch it over to Vito, the concept behind this is to go preventive, prenatal, and intervention. Dr. Vito is a pediatrician. He'll talk about, his contribution to this effort. But if we can hit those two big tiers while continuing to help the brothers and the sisters along their way, we feel that now we can create a metric system for success that everyone can see. It's just not a feel-good moment where we're just talking about it. Now we can see it and we can quantify it. So with that said, Scott, I'm gonna turn it over to my man, my brother, Dr. Vito.
Go ahead, Dr. Vito.
I'm here. Hi. Really a pleasure to be here among all you ladies and men who have been doing this work for so long for so many good reasons. And so how did I wind up here, right? Yeah, I'm an Italian. You can tell that by my name. Grew up, my parents were immigrants, basically in Brooklyn, and found my way up to Westchester over the course of my life. I'm retired now. I was a pediatrician for about 44 years and practiced in different places, the Bronx at one point, Brooklyn, one point up here in Westchester, and sometimes even in Fairfield County, Connecticut. And I always sort of had a blended practice of various socioeconomic groups. And, I was sort of working part-time, and then COVID, I was 70 at that point, and my wife said, well, you're not going into work even part-time anymore. So that was the end of that. And, and I always knew when I fully retired, I would be doing some volunteer work with kids. And so I just, Googled White Plains Youth Services and came up with the Youth Bureau. And it didn't take me long because I kept talking about working with fathers and counseling fathers to Frank Williams. They put me on the fathering committee with my comrade in arms there, Professor Simmons. So, but the reason I kept talking about fathers is because, for those 44 years, I realized that the fathers weren't in the room, right? If I saw a father come in the room, it was a big deal for me. I enjoyed it. I loved it. I'm a father of two, by the way, and 2 boys, and I have 3, beautiful grandchildren. And so it's been great, right? And I always got a joy out of counseling parents. And it was kind of a 3-tiered system, right? So if I counseled just the mom, okay, that was a 1. If I counseled the mom and the dad together, that was, maybe a 2. But if I counseled the dad alone, that was like a 10 for me, right? Because it just was something more intimate about it. And I thought I had, it just was different, I was hit with the fact that medically and psychologically and socially, there's so much being done prenatally and in the early delivery time and postpartum, post-delivery time for the moms, and nothing really done for the dads, right? And the dad is he's like an appendage. And if they come to a visit or two, maybe they come to the 2-week visit, maybe they come to the 1-month visit, and then, you don't see them anymore. And then if I've told this story to others, I apologize for the repeat. At around 15 months, 18 months, the mom comes in alone for that visit and she's tearful. And, what happened? Well, the dad left. Well, and I always wondered if we could support that dad a little bit better, whether we'd be in a different place. So, Donnie and I and the rest of the subcommittee that were sort of planning what we were going to do for this year sort of came up with this design of, talking to the teens and now maybe talking to these young dads and trying to identify them prenatally with the help of the hospital. And we've had some preliminary meetings with the local hospital, and they've gone very well. And we're hoping to start a program where volunteer-wise, but with some push, hopefully, from the social service department and the care management nurses on the floor, and even from the OB groups who are taking care of the moms prenatally, to sort of advise some dads, the young dads, the first-time dads, maybe the dads who aren't living with the moms, if they can identify them, to take part in this program to help them. And the program is going to be taken from Fathering in 15, which I have some familiarity with from another thing I did my first year with the Youth Bureau. And then I will sort of administer it and be the constant facilitator, but then I'll invite people from the community like Donnie and some other people who are known, who are dads, to be co-facilitators on a sort of rotating basis.
Vito, can you tell us about the award-winning, I'm going to say the award-winning Grandpa program, which is really unique, you know?
That's a whole other thing. That doesn't work with dads, but yeah. So I'm also the part of Grandpas United within the Youth Bureau, and that was founded about 4 or 5 years ago by Frank Williams, who runs the Youth Bureau. Been working there for over 3 decades, and Jim Eisenberg, who's a grandpa as well. And basically, we've recruited a number of grandfathers from the White Plains area to be counselors to various kids, usually teens, who have the one program I've been involved in has been the Youth Court. So Youth Court is a diversion program where if the kid is under 16 and gets in trouble with the police, rather than going through the regular family court system and having a record and all that kind of stuff, they go through a youth court, which is actually another activity for the youth in the high school. It's actually run by youth. I didn't know that until I went to my first one. So you've got these 16, 17, 18-year-old kids. There's a judge, there's a bailiff, there's a two defense lawyers, 2 prosecutors, there's a child advocate. And basically, after the offense is committed, and even before the hearing of the youth court, the child who had the offense is hooked up with one of the grandpas for community service, in which the grandpa acts as a mentor. Usually it's 2 hours a week over 2 separate sessions for about 12 sessions. And the idea is not to be his parent, not to be the police, not to be the judge or anything, but just to sort of get to know the kid, try to bond with the kid, and then get a sense of hoping by what I tried to do was look at, well, who do you respect? Your coach or your teacher or whatever it is, and then say, well, what do you think you have to do to be that kind of person? And sort of see that when they acted impulsively and did what they did that got them into trouble, that may have not been the best thing to do to get them to their basic goal. The other thing that the grandpas do is they visit the primary grade schools. I have not done that yet, and there was a sort of hiatus on that during COVID because that was an in-person thing, and talk to a group of kids, just boys, and they play games with them basically. And sort of indirectly try to counsel them. And there's also something going on in the middle school now where every Friday between 3 and 4, the 6th graders who are earmarked by the principal as needing, sort of a male figure, are allowed to play basketball for half an hour. And then after that, they sort of sit around in a circle, and there's 1 or 2 grandpas there that just sort of talks about a subject that would interest them. And so there's a lot going on, and Frank has been able to spread it to the other youth bureaus. So we have a grandpa program now in Portchester, and we have one in Peekskill. And I think there may be one brewing in New Rochelle. But
I know there's a part of it. I think I was talking to Frank, or maybe you, that, and I also see it as a second chance for a lot of dads to get it right. Guys who may have, they messed up with their kids, but this grandpa program is another way of men of being father figures and learning from their experience how to get it right with these new young boys. And that was something that was amazing to me that gave dads two things: gave them a second chance at parenting and saying, "Well, I can get it right now." And I learned from my experience with my kids what I might have messed up, what I might have did wrong, but I can help this young man or this young girl get it right through the grandpa program. And once again, it gives a lot of our kids that we know that are going to either end up in ACS with Mike and them, give them a father figure that they can connect with also. So I remember hearing about that in the idea of the grandpa program too.
yeah, I mean, one of the ways we bond with the kids is saying, all the mistakes we made with our kids, right? So or the mistakes we made when we were their age, So yeah, absolutely, that is part of it. And yeah, there's a whole bonding system of the grandpas as well. I mean, that there's coffees, whether virtually or in person now, and those kinds of things too. So we meet just for ourselves and try to have mutual support around mentoring and learning and sharing what's been going on with our particular mentor and asking for help in those ways as well.
So we're going to keep moving on, and I'm going to throw it over to my brother Kenny Carter out here in Queens, who's really in the streets. I always tell people, that I used to ride around with Queens with somebody, and this guy used to ride around with Queens, and he would stop at certain buildings and say, "Come on, man, let's go on this side." And I'd be like, "Nah, Kenny, I'm staying out here." So Kenny goes to places where I won't go, and does the work. I mean, does the work with the fathers who most of us will not go and see. But Kenny is out there getting those dads and those fathers in the community and the pink houses and the projects and the housing things. He goes and gets them and deals with them. So I want to introduce, if you have not heard, and Kenny knows I'm a huge fan of his work that he does. If you haven't heard of this organization called Faith, Fathers Alive in the Hood, which is I'm just so excited about everything. Every time I see them, I'm not sure if there's a housing project in New York that Kenny doesn't have some kind of person with their black and white faith jacket on, showing that they're there, but they're present in more places than I even know about. But I'm gonna turn it over to Kenny Carter and let him talk a little bit about Fathers Alive in the Hood.
Wait, Scott, can I just interrupt you quickly before Kenny starts to just kind of give a little shout out to Kenny. I was in a site visit meeting last week with one of my providers, and they had a guest speaker, actor and producer Malik Yoba was there talking to the dads, and one of the dads got up and said that he belongs, or he's visited a program called Faith, and he was giving high praises to Faith while he's in another fatherhood program. And I wanted to kind of hear a little bit more what he was saying, but he was like, this brother does this and he does that. But then, he was kind of cut off. So I was like, oh my goodness, I couldn't hear everything he said. So just a shout out to you for your continuous work that you do. And it's, believe me, it's spreading to the ears of many.
All right, well, I appreciate each and every one of you. As Brother Scott said, my name is Kenny Carter. I'm the founder and executive president of Fathers Alive in the Hood, which was established in 2011. We are a 501c3 organization. And currently, we've been doing a lot of different work in different areas, as Scott said, but mainly I've been, since 2011, my focus has been fatherlessness. So when we talk about, fatherhood and things of that nature, and then we even think about the balance that we have in our communities, our main focus has always been fatherlessness, because fatherlessness is one of the root causes to the violence in America. And I am a key believer of this. And even with some of the statistics that Brother Dunbar was speaking about earlier, when he said it was 50%, and I beg to differ. It might be a lot more than 50% of, the ratio when it comes to single mothers, and then, also having no fathers in the homes. So I don't know about a lot of you guys. I know when I was 14, I was out on my own, and I didn't have, my father was there, but he was never there. He was one of those kind of guys. So it kind of made it kind of like imperative for me to be able to create something that kind of addresses that issue, because I know how important it is to have a male role model in your life, a positive male role model, should I say, in your life, that is able to kind of speak some truth into your heart that is acceptable by you. Because a lot of times if the individual is not trusted, you'll look at him from a different perspective, and whatever he say, it goes on the back burner. With faith, I've developed a program which is called our JEGNA program. It's spelled JEGNA. Our JEGNA program is a violence deterrent model that I've been utilizing for some time now. So when I say violence deterrent, that means that we provide financial initiatives to some of our participants in order for them to be deterred from the violence that they can possibly engage in if they were just freely in the streets or in the projects, wherever. Because I can recall some times when I was young, like around 14, 13, I had the older guys, they'll give me about a 10 pack of crack and say, bring me $70 back and you keep the 30. And I'm like, that was just like all the money that I needed to go grab me something to eat and, probably even buy me a pair of sneakers. So I figured out, with the help of DYCD and some other funders, we were able to create this program, which was a 12-week program. And let's say for 12 weeks, I have about 15 participants. Out of 15 participants, each of them receives, providing they make, their attendance is good, is $650 at the completion of the 12 weeks. And one program would run approximately $9,000 after a 12-week course. But out of that $9,000, I get about a 50% turnaround. So if I have 15 participants, I'll have about 6 to 7 of them that say, Mr. Carter, I'd like to volunteer my time in becoming a member of the program. I've already received my stipend, but I want to volunteer because I see, the fruit of it. And I know that it's valuable. And, that's what I kind of like pride myself on, because I do have a lot of young men and even fathers who are able to engage in some of the work that we do. And I utilize that intergenerational kind of model, right? Where we have some older guys, some younger guys, and they have, come and sit down. And we'll have these conversations that are really hard conversations. And some of them are even to the degree where, just like Brother Scott said earlier, that, she got some guys who really was messed up as dads. And, they made some mistakes, but now, here comes this platform that they have, that they can be able to come into this room with these young boys that's 14, 16, 17, 19 years old. And, some of them are street, and some of them got a little attitude problem. Some of them are mandated by their mom. Their mom comes to the office and they register them. And when they register, they have to bring their high school. They have to bring their, if they finish school, they have to bring their New York State ID. They have to bring a resume. They have to bring these things that can verify that they're employable. Because if they don't have these things, then we have to help them work on them. And for those who are in school, when they do register, that we have to at least get their recent report card so that we can be able to assess the needs in regards to the academic skills and things of that nature. So we can see if he needs help with working. We can see if he needs help with his math or reading, things of those natures. So when we have those situations occur, and let's say, there's an individual who might need help reading, we might have a brother or two that's in there that's good. So I'll be saying, take this time out and work with this young man right here on the side for a couple of hours. So let's say our program days are Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Mondays, we are in East New York Pink Houses. We're working as co-locators in the Canberra site, which is 2702 Linden Boulevard. We have our own headquarters, which is located at 11402 Guyard Brewer Boulevard, Suite 215. We're predominantly open 5 days out the week, from the hours of 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. And also we also have another session that we have in Far Rockaway, which is in Ocean Village, and that is ran from 6 to 8. And also Monday is 6 to 8 as well. So those are sites that we have outside of our headquarters.
And Kenny, can I just do a plug with tell everybody, call before you come because you don't want to be rolling up in there, just rolling up. So call when you come to those sites. Let Kenny know you're on your way so you can get through.
Right, because this is some things that goes on in these communities that we have to be kind of aware of. And again, I'm more so proactive instead of reactive. And I say the word proactive with pride because I don't want to wait until somebody gets killed or there's a domestic dispute and all of a sudden we out there talking about, oh, we got to stop this. No, the goal is as fathers to make sure our children get farther than what we can possibly imagine that we can even go, right? So when I look at this whole work, what we're doing here with this initiative and this whole month of June is so like spectacular to me that I was like, I'm ready like to sign a petition to say, I don't know about Father's Day, but let's get this Father's Month going just on the fact that Juneteenth is kind of like tottering in between landing on Father's Day this year and not following, and then the following year. And then we got to go between, sharing Father's Day with Juneteenth, right? So I'm really with the advocacy when we talk about the month of the father, right? We need the whole month to be kind of focused on fatherhood and what we're doing as a whole, because there's so much of, there's so much of a need for the positive presence of male role models in different communities throughout the United States of America right now as we speak. And when we talk about this issue of fatherhood, or even I say fatherlessness, that is so imperative that we men who are able to fill in the gaps in these different communities should be implored to be like, I need to be there. I need to go into these particular communities because when we have absence, we are showing that they're not valued enough. And our presence gives them that value that they need. And sometimes it takes us to just take that time out of our lives, our busy schedules, and just to say, I'm here on these days and I'm here and I'm going to show you how much I love you, because love is an action word. It's just not some smoke that, we just spit in the air every now and then and say, yeah, I love you. But no, when we take our time out of our schedules and we show these young men that we got, we care about their well-being. We care if they will eat at night, right? Because even with our program, we make sure we provide them with at least a hot meal. And I go, and a lot of the vendors in my community, they don't like me. I'm like the gooch. I'll go in there and I'll be like, listen, y'all in the black is in the black-owned community. We need help, and these kids need to eat. So I don't plan on paying on this out of my pocket, but if I have to, I will. But I'm just saying the best nation is a donation, right? So we get these things kind of established to the degree where we have, every time we have a program, we have some hot food that is served to our participants. They're going home and they're always leaving with more than what they came in with. And that's one of the key things. I never want to have, even in this particular forum that we're having, if any of us leave here with less than what we had, then we just wasted our time. So if we're here right now and we're able to, how you say, iron sharpens iron, if we're here and we getting our little situation going and we sharpening each other, we're listening, we're writing down notes and things of that nature, then we're actually doing ourselves a great service as fathers, because we're utilizing, our brother Scott's toolbox. That's what he like to say, right? We're putting these tools in that box, and we're knowing when to go into that toolbox to use what we need to use and where we need to use them at. We can't use the same tools in Queensbridge that we using out in Far Rockaway. Those are two different situations, right?
That's a different work. You talking about my personal work now. But I think, well, I ain't gonna talk about Daddy's toolbox, but I'll leave it alone. Y'all know about it. So, but thanks, Kenny, for that little. Wait, let me make sure I didn't pay you for that plug, but. So next I want to bring on now this brother. He's probably been doing fatherhood longer than anybody I know of doing fatherhood, and he does it on a level that it's just so big. He does spoken word, he does films, he does conversation, he takes that to events. He had a week long this month. I think every month every year. He does a week-long event. He gives out awards to fathers for the Real Dads Network. He's I think they say a movie producer because he produces films. He has many different things. And this is the guy that I know that if I got something on my mind at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, I know his wife probably gets mad that he knows I may just call him and just say, hey, Derek, Derek, let's go to the phone. Let's kick it. Let's talk about something. He's helping deal with legislation, so many different things. But I really appreciate that Derek is so knowledgeable. He was a vice principal, but now he's retired and he's in the fatherhood 100%. I really want to introduce the Real Dads Network, the CEO, executive, the head honcho, the poobah, the what other name can I give you? But introduce Derek Phillips. Hey, Derek.
Thanks, Scott. Good evening, everybody. Man, Scott, I got to take you on the road with me, man. I didn't know who you were talking about. I was looking around. But thanks, Scott. I'm just great being here. I'm also, Kenny, I'm also a big fan of the work that you do, brother. I've always been a fan of the work that you do. And I know when we talk about Kenny Carter is doing the work that a lot of us, places that we're not going to go. And I really lean on Kenny because I know he is definitely on the ground, and anything I can do to support, anything that we all can do to support this brother, we should make sure we support him in any way that we can. I'm just going to talk, I'm going to try to be brief, but in terms of Real Dads Network started in 2004. It derived from a documentary called Real Dads, Black Men on Fatherhood that I did in 2000 that had commentary by the late, great Ozzie Davis. This was the first documentary that was ever done that focused on Black fatherhood. As a result of doing the documentary, what I realized that when it came to just Black men, we didn't have a place to go. We didn't have a place to go to get resources, to get support. So in 2004, I started Real Dads Network, where what we did at Real Dads Network is that the focus of Real Dads Network was to focus on the positivity. So many times when we talk about fathers and Black fathers particularly, we always focus on negativity. So we focus on the negative, we focus on absent, we focus on what they're not doing, but then we focus on the negativity, but yet we want positive results. So in order to get positive results, you can't focus on negativity, you got to focus on the positive. So that's what we do at Real Dads Network. For 13 years, we've been doing a Real Dads Week where we celebrate fathers for a whole week. We've given away over 250 awards. We've done also a daddy-daughter dance. We've influenced Chicago directly to do a daddy-daughter dance. We influenced Philadelphia directly. We influenced New Jersey directly. And we influenced Virginia. And we indirectly influenced other organizations to do daddy-daughter dances throughout the country. So, and I'm trying to go brief. But this year we also did the Real Dads Week from June 4th to June 11th. We had the, as you spoke, Scott, the Family Fun Day, the DYCD. You guys were very instrumental in terms of pulling it off. So we really appreciate you guys' involvement and appreciate the work that you guys done in terms of making that happen. We also had the spoken word. We also had the comedy with comedian talent. And we had a Real Dads Club where we had Sean Dove came in and was leading that chair for our Real Dads Club. Now for our Real Dads Club, we used to meet once a month, but with the pandemic that stopped, so we started meeting virtually. We have been meeting every week for over 2 years. We have not missed 1 week in 2 years. We also have the Barbershop every other week, and we have various speakers that come in to talk to the group dealing with issues in terms of mental health, eating right, the importance of going to therapy, but also the importance of just being vulnerable. Because one of the things that we know when we talk about men, we tend not to be vulnerable. We tend not to take care of ourselves. So one of the things that we focus on is that we say as men, we have to be selfish. So a lot of times when we hear the word selfish as men, we're like, oh no, I can't be selfish. You have to be selfish, because what happens is that we focus on everybody else, but we don't focus on ourselves. So if you really want to be that real dad, you have to make sure your glass is full so you're able to pour into the people that are in your family and your communities. So that's very important as men, that we really take care of ourselves. But it's also important as men that we have a place to go, because that's one of our biggest challenges, that we don't really have a place to go. So I'm going to try to go short. But one of the things we talked about Juneteenth. I'm glad that we're talking about Juneteenth. And I hear the conversation when we talk about Juneteenth is that, okay, now we have Juneteenth and now we have Father's Day. So now Black fathers are going to lose out because now everybody's going to be focused on Juneteenth. What I say is Juneteenth is a phenomenal time for us to reflect. It's a phenomenal time for us to reflect, because here's a book, Slavery, Fatherhood, and Paternal Duty. So if you know the history, right, I'll put it up there again, right? Slavery, fatherhood, and paternal duty. What happens is that Juneteenth allows us to go back and really talk about the history. We know based on the history is that fathers, despite that oppressive system, fathers were still finding ways to navigate that system to be fathers. They were still finding ways to protect their boys and girls. They were still finding ways to provide. And guess what? When we talk about this conversation, did you have a conversation with your child? Fathers in slavery, enslaved men were having a conversation with their children about how to navigate this system. So they were doing that. So they were always, despite all the stuff that they were putting around them. And then when we talk about fatherlessness, let's be real about this. The first one, when we talk about fatherlessness, were the white slave owners who would have these children and not claim them. Okay, so we do know in terms of slavery, Black fathers, despite all that, were doing everything they could to be a part of their children's lives. Then we talk about Juneteenth. Juneteenth ends when? 1865. Guess what happened in 1865? What a lot of Black men started doing, they were going in search of their families. They were, and this is documented stuff. They're putting ads in newspaper, looking for, a wife name is Jesse, son's name is James. So they were putting ads in newspapers across the country looking for their children. So despite all of that, we see fathers were still trying to engage despite everything that was going on. So what we know from history, we know that Black men and fathers, they have this thing inside them where despite what you put up against them, they're going to find ways to persevere. They're going to find ways to do what they need to be done. And I don't know if you know, in terms of Frederica Wilson has had a bill called the Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys. This bill stated that historically the federal government has created obstacles and barriers that have prevented Black men from succeeding. Her bill was co-sponsored on the Senate side by Mark Rubio. The bill was signed into law in 2020 by Donald Trump. There is a law called the Social Status of Black Men and Boys. And this law states that the federal government has historically created these obstacles and barriers that have prevented Black men and boys from succeeding. But despite all that, because we know this from slavery, we find ways to persevere. I'm going to give you another one, another book. Zora Neale Hurston, Barracoon. This book is about Kojo Lewis, and this talks about the Clotilda, the last slave ship that came to America. In terms of importing slaves, it was considered illegal after 1808. It was illegal. In 1860, they imported 136 slaves from West Africa. On this ship was Kojo Lewis, a 19-year-old who in Africa went through a rites of passage program in Africa, went through the Middle Passage in terms of the transatlantic slave trade, went through the oppressive system of slavery and was freed, and gave an account of the whole story from Africa when he went through the rites of passage, had that whole experience, the transatlantic slave trade, slavery, and freedom. And guess what? When he became free in 1865, Juneteenth, right? When he got his freedom, you know what he did? He got together with a lot of his other African brothers, and they said, you know what we're gonna do? I wanna go back home. They didn't have the money to go home. So you know what they did? They said, we're gonna pull our resources, because this is what we have to do as Black men. We're gonna pull our resources together. They pulled their resources together and they created Africa Town. They created their own town that is still in existence today in Mobile, Alabama. They build a church, they build a school. So we have that history to show us that despite all of that, we will persevere, but we must learn from history. That in order for us to succeed, in order for this movement, a fatherhood movement, to really make a dent and to move forward, we have to work together collectively. That's the only way it's going to work. It's not about you doing your thing and you doing your thing here. It only works when we pull all our resources together and we get rid of the egos and all the other stuff about it has to be me. When we put all that stuff, get rid of that, when we do that, then we can create something like an African town. Thank you.
Derek, there's a question in the chat. Dave, can you come on and read the question? I don't even have my YouTube open this long. Dave, can you come on with the question? There's a question in the chat for you.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Derek. Just had a quick question. There's somebody who says, so does this bill tie into HR?
The Commission on the Social
40.
Status of Black Men and Boys. If they're talking about
Yes.
the Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys, it is not a bill anymore. It is a law. It is a federal law.
Wow. You know, I don't know if I've even heard about that, and I'm pretty sure many of us haven't heard about it.
The social status, the Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys, it is no longer a bill. It is a law. Donald Trump signed it into law in 2020.
Does he know what he was signing?
Huh?
Did he know what he was signing?
Well, but you know what? It was something that Frederica Wilson was pushing in Florida. It was, I think even now, Hakeem Jeffries is also part of that commission. Al Sharpton is part of that commission.
Wow.
So this is a law. It's no longer a bill. It is a law.
You saying they part of the commission is in what? As they were
In terms of the commission has to make recommendations to the federal government in terms of what are some things they need to put in place to remove these barriers and obstacles.
So we add a lot of resources to each session. Derek, if you could either email or put in the chat, and then David can include it in the resources. So if anyone wants to see the legislation, they can review it even after the session.
Yeah, definitely. And also use the put those the name of the books, the titles of the books in the chat as well. Definitely want to add our libraries.
So this is a great point.
I'm sorry, Scott. I just want to tell Derek really quickly. He thanked us for being a part of his Family and Fun Day. I mean, I think we are thanking you again. I thanked you that day. I'm thanking you again now. It was an awesome event, and we were privileged to attend. Whoever was not a part of it, some of our providers couldn't attend, but it was an awesome event. Thank you so much for having us. And I'm looking forward to next year.
Thank you.
So this is a good point to jump into. You know, we only got a half hour, another little over half hour to do this. But and we always do this. That's why, you know, we probably need a 3-hour segment coming up eventually. But what I want to throw out to the group. So what are some of our next steps we should be doing? We've done some great things. You've heard some great things around from each one of us. I'm going to give it to anybody to jump in. What should be some of our next steps to keep building, keeping this momentum going, working together to accomplish some things that we need to accomplish? Anybody?
And we should be pooling together our resources, like Brother Derek was talking about, and actually looking at, you know, I think we had a conversation not too long ago about creating these fatherhood centers and actually having some locations throughout the city where it could be accessible to our youth and as well as our fathers to be able to receive some real services that will be impactful in their lives when we talk about, you know, just fatherhood in general. So, I mean, and on here, there's a lot of good brothers who's dealing in that field of fatherhood, and we all work in our different perspective areas. But I believe that we might be able to come together collectively and, you know, put something really solid on to contribute to whatever community that we decide to start at first, because we know we have 5 boroughs in New York. So I don't know how we're going to start it, but I think it's just something that needs to be started.
Well, I think that's coming out of Brother Dunbar's bailiwick. Is that right, Brother Dunbar? With the community centers, the family centers?
Yeah, the family centers are, so it should be expanded. There's one in Brooklyn, East New York. They're called family enrichment centers, and then they're expanding. I think there's one already in the Bronx, but I believe by 2025 they should be all the 5 boroughs. That was put into place actually last year by our former commissioner, so David Hansel. So that's the goal. That's what's going to happen. So one is in East New York already, and then there's another one that's coming, and then there's one in the Bronx, and then the others are going to be opened up in all the 5 boroughs.
Great. So let's start talking about anybody else. Q, anybody, Donnie. What should be some of our next steps? You know, we always talk about we need to pool, we need to bring together, but we need to come together to do what? What should be one of the steps if anybody thinks they
I
guys
think,
get this way?
and it's a bit of everything that we talked about tonight. And I think it's, brothers are doing really great work. I think we need to hear about the work that is happening. And we have to be really, and I've been doing this work for a long time now, and I know how it's competitive. A lot of it is ego driven. We got to move beyond that, because we're staying in the same place. We're really having a conversation that, I've been doing this for 20 some odd years now. Same conversations that we've had, me and Mike have had years and years ago. Like, what can we do to work better together? How can we, get fathers more involved? So I'm just going to run down like some words that were just coming to my mind as we were talking about. And I think, we got to key in on accountability again. It's an ongoing conversation, but what does that mean in terms of systems and not and outside of systems? What does it mean around who holds who accountable? What does that look like? And who we accountable to, right? So we should be accountable to our kids, accountable to the people that do harm to us, and we need to hold those that do harm to us accountable, right? So accountability has to be a constant thread in our conversation. And if we're talking about Black men and men of color in particular, they're not to be not held accountable, but we have to hold men accountable with compassion, right? Because we are also survivors of racism and all these other ills of society that both men and women face, right? So the accountability part is, what are we doing as men around people we do harm to? So we got to be held accountable, and we constantly evolve that conversation, not just that I did something, but about the consequences of action, the change that needs to be made in our work, in these programs that we go to, and reparations in some form, right? We have to look at how do we repair our communities. And then I'm also talking about, somebody mentioned equity. I think equity, it might have been you, Brother Dunbar. Equity is important, right? Not necessarily equality, because in the fight for equality can be very violent. We have to be mutual and equitable in our relationships between men and women. I think we have to rethink and redefine, or expand how we view what manhood and fatherhood is. We have to kind of reimagine some of these gender roles that keep us stuck into this enemy consciousness between men and women, mothers and fathers, right? And even with elders, I'm glad we mentioned the grandfathers. Elders are key people in this conversations of transforming the relationships, the elders and the youngest of us, right? So we have to engage in that. Amicable, right? The fatherhood conversation. Before I was at Connect doing DV work, I was doing fatherhood work, and it was really about amicable relationships. Yes, we got to develop fatherhood and fathers, but we can't separate it from parenthood and parenting. So we have to make sure that we're amicable for the sake of these children. We don't even got to be together, but we got to show each other respect to raise these kids. Domestic violence, I'm glad Dunbar and some other brothers, I know, Kenny, we've been in this conversation for a long time when it first started about that intersection. So I appreciate the work you're doing now, brother. We gotta, include other entry points around violence, domestic violence, whatever it may be, community violence, gun violence, of course. But I'll just end on this, right? The mental health conversation, and brother Phillips, what you talked about in terms of moving from monthly spaces to online spaces. My men's roundtable is shifted in the same way. Brothers here, once a month in person. We moved to 2 times a week during the heights of COVID. So men had a space to talk about, the challenges of manhood and masculinity under COVID and what that meant for parenting and being, at home with other folks. So mental health needs to be a daily diet, and we have to talk about trauma, not trauma informed, but trauma infused. Everything is trauma. Even us as these men, we work with those who are traumatized. So we got to check out our own mental health as well. And I'll end on that, Scott.
Okay, so I want to go to our resident mental health, which is Jerry Hippolyte. So Jerry, talk a little bit about mental health. I know you've been quiet back there, but that's your work.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Now, when it comes to men and mental health, first off, it's the silent assassin for men because men don't talk. There's a lot of what we call emotional homelessness, and there's not a lot of spaces for men to say, this is how I feel without it being stigmatized. I'm talking about even within the home. And, my perspective really comes from, I want to say that Q started, and I'm going to use that as a springboard about like relationships and not just being amicable, but just understanding that as relates with fatherhood, that it shouldn't be tethered to the relationship, i.e., therefore, if we break up, I'm no longer the father of my child. Like there's a harsh separation with that, whether it be for emotional needs or not, but leaving space for a father to be a father, right? I think with the biggest disservice that happens, social media, and even though it may be in a genuine space, celebrating mothers on Father's Day is a disservice to fathers, right? And I don't mean it in a harsh way, but the reality is a mother at her best capacity, and as great and I honor her as she is, doesn't trump a father at his lowest capacity, because there's just the presence of a father being there really supports the social emotional need of a child. And then taking that level to champion fathers that this is your role, regardless of circumstance. And this is how we support you in this space so they can thrive in that space is beyond crucial. So creating those dynamics and understanding from the social relational perspective of what that looks like, that maybe we are not together, but that doesn't mean I am no longer a father. Maybe this didn't work out, because the dynamics of even what that looks like in the 1980s, I would say up until the 2000s, especially with the empowerment of women getting higher wages, where men, the traditional role was being a breadwinner, right? That father was being a breadwinner and then coming and bringing a certain level of discipline to the household. Now there's a different interaction of what fathers look like at home. They are really in-depth caregivers. And even that, I want to say foolish, but stigma that the comparison or competitive nature that a mother or women are better caregivers, mothers are better caregivers than fathers. All that needs to be blown out the box, because a father being present, giving care, has nothing to do with the competitive nature or whatever that may look like with a mother giving care. Simply creating and knowing that that is a unit and supporting that space is really what gives that child or children said need to thrive. And the more men that understand that, live in that space, or I should say, given that space, because a lot of it is taken away. We heard it from Professor Simmons. When it's taken away, whether it be through systemic racism, what it went from relational, when that role is taken away, the void not only hurts even the mature development of the man, because he's like, okay, where do I put my emotions in this place? I don't go, but also the development of that child. So I wanted to put that plug in, that the two are correlated too much, where it's actually doing more self-harm than anything else, where it really needs to be a space, not just amicable, but there's a modeling that comes when a father is present, and then also has a strong relationship with that co-parent, and what does that look like to encourage, reinforce, and support fatherhood in its general space. But I'll take a step back. I didn't want to give too much and leave that.
Well, I want to sling it over to Dr. Vito, because he
Yeah.
said something really important about how at month 15, you don't see dad anymore. And I don't know, Dr. Vito, I know you have your hand up in your question, but that correlation hit me, Jerry, that, that breakup. And I don't know what it is, but go ahead, Doc.
Yeah, no, so I just wanted to sort of take off what Jerry said, and a number of other people said it in terms of the word relationship, right? And the fact is that most parents, black, white, Asian, brown, doesn't make any difference, don't understand when that baby's born, whatever relationship they had, married, unmarried, living together, not living together, that relationship with that person is now different, right? So I think that needs to be sort of said up front, and sort of, think about that. I mean, think about it. Yeah. So if you can address that, I think it also takes the onus off. Well, you're a dad and you've got all this work to do because of whatever, you're a dad, but as opposed to a mom, you now have a different relationship with that mom, and you have this new relationship with this baby. And so if we couch it sometimes in terms of that, I think it's a good way to start the conversation. But, certainly, again, regardless of race, men have a hard time showing their emotions. And probably the last person in the world they want to show it to is their spouse or significant other, right? Because they can't be weak. But we got to break that down. And that's all I wanted to say.
Derek, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I have a number of things. I would say that in terms of, I know we talked about the family census, but I think it's really important that we be honest and that we also be intentional. And I say, when I talk about being honest, we know when we say the word family and parenting, it really doesn't include fathers. So we got to be honest, because that's what it's all. The services in terms of what's being provided are really around mothers. Like even we hear WIC, we know WIC is what? Women, infants, and children, right? We don't have something for dads, right? So, but we just got to be very intentional. And that's why in terms of having these fatherhood centers, and Jerry, you spoke about that as well, where we got to be very deliberate about this is a space, because men are different. And there's certain ways we need to approach them that are totally different. And they have to be able to have that space where they can be vulnerable with each other. They can be honest.
I wanted to jump in, and I'm glad.
I'll just say one other thing, because another thing I think we got to, when we look at this research, right? When we look at the research states that 70% of children are born to unwed mothers. It doesn't mean that fathers are not present, because when you really look at the statistic states that 60% of Black children are living with both of their parents. So whenever we use the term single mothers, we automatically think the mother is raising a kid alone. What it means is that the mother is single. When she had to check off married, single, she said single. The man is in the household, but she's single. But we automatically assume that she's, the dad is absent. So we really got to change our language, because what really happens when we start looking at the data, we don't have a lack of father absence. What we really have is a lack of resources, a lack of support, a lack of opportunities, and a lack of access. That's why you have that bill, the Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys, because they're saying historically we have prevented them from trying to succeed. So we got to look at those avenues, but we got to also be careful as leaders, the language that we use, because people are listening to that as well.
I see Michael Dunbar also has his hand raised, so I'll hold off and have Mike jump in.
I truly appreciate what everyone is saying, especially Jerry. You hit it on the nail on the head. Because in child welfare we see that often in our cases, right? When they enter the court systems, and really and truly, it speaks to a lot of the work that we have to do internally, teaching and speaking to both parents the ability to co-parent. For the sake of those children. Just because we're not together, that doesn't mean that I can't be a father to my child. And is having those discussions with them, and I've had those discussions and holding accountable, just like you said, to those fathers too, to let them know that their actions when they're negative, they have to be held responsible for those negative actions, but then also extend them that olive branch to do better and show them how to do better, because unfortunately, quite often they're not with a role model who can show them the way. So we in child welfare, we do have a responsibility to help them understand and show them that there are other ways to really work through the process, and it's our duty to educate our both parents, but specifically fathers, how to navigate those systems as well. Don't stay away from it, but to know how to navigate through it. And the more we can do that, I think we can also have better outcomes as well. But Jerry, you're 100% right. I applaud you for that, because it is true. It impacts in a negative way to our children, and the family outcomes are oftentimes negative as well.
I was struck by what Q said earlier, and it continues to sit with me that in some ways, and now my words and my reflection on it, we're sort of stuck in a way. Like we're doing a lot of good work, but in terms of where we want to go, we're repeating, I don't mean in this discussion, but like over time, we're repeating some of the same conversations. And so the two words that are coming up for me that I want to put into this space are being holistic and being transformational. And I'm hearing much being said about different service modalities and aspects of the way services need to be delivered to individual dads. And I think that that is of primary importance. But this other thing that I'm sort of listening for is maybe of everyone listening to this conversation right now, there are some dads, and some of those dads need services. So they should go to the resources. We're going to share them. They sign up for a fatherhood program, or maybe they don't need a fatherhood program, but they meant to be on the steps of Brooklyn Borough Hall with Q to sign that Father's Day pledge. Or maybe they're now hearing, oh, weekly conversations with the Real Dads Network. I'm a dad. I should be in a network with other dads. That to me is part of being getting toward being holistic and transformational. And what's coming up for me, a lot of what I'm hearing is, and Derek, you really hit on this among other folks, but you really hit on it. We need to pay attention to our language, yes, but we need to pay attention to how other people have used language to define the problem, to define us, to limit and to reinforce certain things. It's making me think about at the beginning of this conversation when I and others were talking about Juneteenth and being accountable for systems and responses and being responsive. So we need to continue to find ways, as busy as we ourselves may feel, and as busy as other dads and fathers may be in their own life, and they're doing a great job raising their children, they're doing a great job bravely navigating co-parenting waters and creating paradigms that work for their family. How do we continue to enlist them to reach out and to support another man? Because that's not necessarily how many of us were socialized to do it, like what Kenny Carter is doing and what others are doing. I'm going to go out of my way to go approach men that I don't necessarily know and draw them into a conversation about saving our community together. So I'm happy to hear others talk about ways that we stand up alongside of our services delivery, these other transformational conversations. If we're trying to shift a conversation, shift narratives, and shift how we're now expecting as fathers, as men, for us to interact with one another as well as with women.
Mike, if I could just use, and I'll be really quick, like the fact that most of us have this backdrop in our Zoom screens, the barbershop, and this is a figurative thing, but literally, and I think every time I'm on this barbershop conversation, I talk about when I first started, my mom used to take me and my brother to barbershops. We don't use that now because I got like hair down my back, but my mom would drop us off, and the conversations that me and my brother had with the barbers were like, hey, how you doing? How the ladies treating you? We talked about fatherhood, we talked about masculinity, we talked about coaching, playing ball, all the typical things that men do. So barbershops and beauty shops are like churches and communities. We got to go there, show up, participate, be involved in some of those conversations. And then when I got older, I ran batterers groups in barbershops after hours, because that's where men were. We got to go where men are, be ourselves, tell our stories and our narratives, because that is the answer to the language question. Because we use masculinity, we use all these fancy terms and jargon that we wouldn't use in the street, that Kenny's not using in the street in the same ways. So we got to meet people where they are, literally and figuratively. Go to our barbershops, go to our summer programs where they're playing ball, whatever it is. We got to go where men are and have some just general conversations. We don't got to get into the principal contradiction of violence and blah, blah, right? Let's just have the conversations, hear what they're talking about, get their buy-in, and then we start imposing our will. But we got to, like, and Jerry, this, when you're training to be a social worker, clinician, they say, don't tell your story, it's about them. We got to tell our stories so we can connect with folks. So I would just say that, and just keep creating spaces where we could be in conversation, single gendered, of course, but yes, we got to bring men and women together also.
Can you and Jerry, I'm sorry, go Jerry, go.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to piggyback on what Q said. I'm gonna take it from the original question that Scott really talked about when it comes to men, like creating that safe space to be vulnerable, to share your story. Like it is vital, and then be courageous to take that brave step. I remember when I was raising my daughter, I was super intentional of being present to a point where I remember her first GYN appointment when it came to think like I wanted to be the one, to a point where when I would go to places, they would random people, what are you doing here? Isn't the mother, that's usually the mother's job? And I was probably, nope, it's me. Like before the sports world, Kobe and everybody, and God rest his soul, love him to death. Girl dads became a big trend, and you start seeing a lot of kids and podiums with different sports athletes. That is a beautiful big thing, to just empowerment. Like, no, this is your place, right? Like there's room at the table. It's not just for just the mother. There's room this is your role, and it's okay to take full authority of that role. And creating that space, going back to the original question of men's mental health. Yes, you can be vulnerable with your kids. It's okay to trip and fall, and you both get up together, and that's how you raise your kids and model it for your kids. And then sharing that with your other brothers. And really, when we talk about mental health, it's really within proximity. So now I'm talking about your actual physical brothers, siblings, the people who are in close proximity, giving them the little head nod or wink. It's okay. You could be your full self while raising their parent, and then this is your role. So I just want to really highlight where Q was talking about, and then add different mental health practices with that, as it comes with, exercise and making sure you're healthy, finding that safe space to speak, and creating a safe space for other men to speak to, not just, you okay, you good, and the head, I know, I observed a couple of things. This is not how you typically behave. I know your child wants to see you, or a graduation came and you might have missed it. I know that feels some type of way. I was in a cab with a cab driver, and he was explaining he wasn't there for the graduation. I think it was kindergarten graduation. And it was like, no, we're going to sit on this for a little bit. It's okay to feel that you got tomorrow, the next day, to make up, to enjoy that space. And he was like, I could. Like, there's nothing that says you can't. Creating that environment to say, you are an amazing dad, you can go ahead and do it, and that is your role. So I just really want to emphasize that.
Before you go, Jerry, you're 100% right. My wife, very intentional in just like what you did. My kids are much older now, and one is going off to graduate school, and another is going off to college. And but I remember, throughout the years, she would say, why don't you go to parent-teacher conference by yourself and see what happens? And that response, when I show up there for my daughter and son different days, that response was different. It was very much different. And when my wife and I had that conversation, she was like, how was it? I said, well, babe, you won't believe it. The way they had, spoken to me, first of all, they were shocked. They were shocked. A father show up to parent-teacher conference? Because you see, the narrative have always been, we are always absent, but we always been present. And being vulnerable, absolutely, you're right. We need to have that space. And it's okay to have those conversations too, because I'm a father of both a boy and a girl. And I need to teach them, it is okay to show emotions. The way, all these things have been constructed by not us, because it was by someone else, and actually it's good to be vulnerable and share that with your spouse too as well. It's okay. Thanks for giving me that space, man. I appreciate it.
Derek, you want to jump in?
Just going to say, we talk a lot about fathers, but at the end of the day, we're talking about fathers, but at the end of the day, it's about children, right? So we know, based on the research is very clear. Children need both. Okay, children have a stronger chance of success when they have both parents actively involved. So you need your yin and yang. So what happens is that a lot of our kids are off balance because they don't have both sides. So when we're talking about the fatherhood piece and we're pushing the fatherhood, we're not neglecting the mothers, because we know we're just talking about what's in terms of our children. We're saying our children need both parents actively involved for them to be successful. Because sometimes when we have a conversation with fathers, it's like, what about the mothers? They need both. They need both.
Well, I want to throw it over to Allison, because Allison gets on me about this all the time, about this. It's Allison. I'm not even gonna say it. I'm gonna let you go and talk about that part, Allison. You're muted, Allison. Allison, you're muted. There
I'm
you go.
sorry. Where the dads get all the tools?
Yeah, yeah. And mom say, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah,
Moms and
yeah.
her tools.
We get that a lot. We get, and I kind of phrase it kind of like a drug addict, where they live in this area, in this community, and they use these drugs, abuse these drugs, and then they decide, I got to get myself together, and then they go away and they get clean, they get take their time, but then they come right back to that same area where they started and fall off the wagon and continue these drugs. So we kind of put that in the same perspective as the workshops that we do. Now the workshop, not we, because we don't do hands-on, we don't do hands-on, but what we monitor, where the dads all the time say that, where's the moms? Why can't they get these same tools and get the same information that we're getting? Because they take all of the time to become better dads, to become better listeners, better husbands, better boyfriends, better whatever. And then once they get back to their wives or women or whatever, they don't have those tools. And then they find themselves struggling. Even though a lot of them, I talk to a lot of participants and they tell me they've changed, they've changed people, but they learn how to deal with her differently, but she just does not have it. And it gets, it's just harder. So we're just trying to ensure that we have some decent and enough co-parenting pieces where, just like you guys said, we need both parents. Because if the dad has all of this experience, gets all of these tools, gets all of this knowledge, and wants to be a better dad, he comes right back into that same environment. It's a no-win.
So I see this is about time now, and and it seems like we're just getting warmed up, and we're getting excited about a lot of great information. Dave, I still want to see if there's any other questions in the chat and YouTube, because I like to try to answer some of them. If we have anything, Dave, yes or no?
I didn't see anything.
No, we don't see anything.
Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing
So,
right now.
but we appreciate those who are on YouTube checking in on listening to the conversation. But I want to say, as we get ready to close out, we have some work that I'll say mine for the closeout, but in. So what I want to do is just go through last words, and then I'll try to wrap it up with a little bow. So I'm gonna go to Dr. Professor Simmons. You want to start our closeout? Any last words?
Yeah, there's much to consider with what we're doing. It's going to take a different approach than what we have historically done to meet this end. I will say this, though. I think what will help in this process is to be tactical in our approach. And that is going to require us to accumulate information. And from there, it will inform us, I believe, with regard to the best approaches, plural, of how we wish to do this. But I think the narrative that has been discussed is fully rendered. We have to approach what we want to do differently. I'm not sure how that's going to be done, but I think it can be done.
Great. Dr. Vito, any last words? Can we unmute Dr. Vito for him?
All right, there we
Yeah.
go. Okay. An honor and a pleasure to be part of this panel. Up front, I wanted to say that I learned a lot tonight and look forward to our next one. I just think, I'll just repeat a little of what I said, is that from my perspective, I think, the first 6 to 12 months of life are really stressful. No one's sleeping. And I think that's a good time to sort of intervene in a proactive way, which is, what Donnie and I have been working on in Westchester. And I'll leave it at that. And I really appreciate this opportunity.
Thanks, Dr. Vito. Next, I'm gonna go to Kenny Carter. Some last words for us.
I just like to say, like, before fatherhood, there's brotherhood. All were once, young men at one point in time. We had our little crews, a little associates who we ran with, and we weren't thinking about being fathers at that time in our lives. But yet we had brotherhood that was just unbreakable. And some of us are even still in contact with some of those young men that we were in communications with in our youth, which is also a great thing. And just looking at these things and having an understanding that we are representatives of something that's greater than ourselves when we are out here and we're doing this work. We just also have to be mindful that one of the greatest commodities that is under attack is the soul of our young people. And the soul is simply their mind, their emotions, and in their wills. And these are the same things that are under attack as men that we go through. And having these particular spaces and others that we are able to communicate in and experience positive ways to navigate through the issues that we are going through, or should I say growing through as men, it helps us continue to expand our mindset on solutions. And again, what Brother Derek was speaking about, how powerful the words are that we use in identifying our issues. And it could be so much more of a problem because whatever continues to persist continues to exist. So there are things that we cannot continue to promote. And this is one of the reasons why when people be like gun violence, I'll be like, nah, we working on fatherlessness because we rather see more fathers active in the community and more, doing things a lot more differently. Because I'm kind of on that same page when it comes to identifying these words that we so often in certain forums to pretty much create a narrative that is being watered down when it comes to dealing with fatherhood. And when we talk about fatherhood, we have our own lane. We have our own kind of platform that we should be able to continue to excel in and on, because a father is one of the key components to the family, if not the most important one when it comes to the creator, because we are the gardeners who plants the seed, right? And that's being able to come through that dirt. We are the ones who's supposed to be able to prune it. We're the ones who's supposed to make sure it's raised properly. And I just say that, I believe these forums are great, and I believe that we can continue to expound and build with one another, as much as we can throughout the course of this month and moving forward, because camaraderie is definitely needed in a time such as this. And there's so many things that is happening in our communities that we cannot take our eye off the ball as fathers and the responsibility that we have as men. And once again, being able to respond, right? Having the ability to respond is most important. And some people do not have that ability to respond because of those mental health issues, because of those economic issues that we go through in the community. So I just like to say, let's continue to do this work. Let's continue to open up the resources that is needed in these different communities so that we could be able to show that we are being intentional when it comes to the services that we are offering for the men that are in these particular communities that are suffering.
Thank you, Kenny. Next, we're going to go to Q.
Thanks for that, Kenny. Thanks to everyone for including me on this illustrious panel. I'll just say real quickly that we need to be clear on what the issue is, following up on what Kenny's talking about. We could call it gun violence, domestic violence. It's a human issue, number one, but it is a men's issue. No matter what the thing we're talking about is, so we have to talk about, getting healthy, whole and well. You know what I mean? I think that's going to be the thing that transforms relationships with the mom, our partners, or our children or our families. So if we're well in all those things that, Jerry talked about, vulnerability, honesty, transparency, all of that. And I think, the fatherhood piece is its own industry now. There's different ideology, there's different philosophies, father involvement versus father's rights, and et cetera, that we could get lost in. But so I just need to think that we need to work cross movements, cross issues, wherever men and fathers are involved, right? We do check the stuff that is ridiculous and anti the children, as Derek talked about, of course, because this is all about. So I think we need to work cross issues, cross movements in this. And we also and I love the fact that it was underscored, I think Derek and many other men, that we're not against moms, that we're trying to work with moms. We're trying to step our game up in a lot of ways, like moms are every single day on the front lines, unconditional. We got to be less conditional. We decide because of privilege or whatever it may be, it's not in my self-interest to get involved. We got to get involved anyway, particularly where our young people, our girls are involved, like this abortion issue, right? It's about women's autonomy, but it's also about childhood and communities and finances and politics. It's all of those things. And men, we need to kind of step up around that and say, how does this impact us? And why should we be involved in that? And because women get down with everything that impacts us, right? So we got to be less conditional and collaborate. And, I think Kenny talked about pull resources, pull events together, even if we time out all these different events during June, because there's been a million of them, 4 in a day, right? If we can collaborate, join each other's programs and events, I think that'll be key, collaboration and also working cross movements.
Oh man, you said a mouthful. Brother Dunbar.
Yeah, real quick, it truly was a pleasure to be part of this panel, amongst so much great people and doing great things. We're just going to, taking away is the fact that we just want to, rethink and reimagine, like, we all said, how we're doing this work pretty much. The old ways, it hasn't worked. We need to move forward in a direction that's going to be very much transformative and impactful. And just as I invite Scott and others to ACS and help put this the fatherhood initiative out front, we have to do the same, just like Q said and everybody else says. We have to support each other. This important work. It's for our families, our communities, our children. They are the ones that is going to be living with all these issues long after we are gone, and we have to get it right. We got to get it right. But thank you all for allowing me to be on this space. Appreciate it.
Allison?
Again, I thank you guys as well for letting me finally come into the barbershop. I just want to echo what all of you gentlemen have said. And just short but sweet, we got to keep up the work. We got to keep it up and make it happen.
And I just want to make one emphasis with Allison. The women who work in fatherhood are doing some outstanding work. Allison led a workshop, Women's Voices in Fatherhood. I don't know if that was the title of the workshop, but the women in fatherhood. And let me tell you, we got some sisters out there who are doing the work. And what's that new phrase, Allison?
I wanted to say it, but I said, just in case she's listening or we on YouTube and they hear it and think that I took it, I didn't. This is from my sister in Ohio, but she said, our hood is fatherhood. I want to make me a t-shirt so bad with that on that for me and Scott, but I can't because my girl from Ohio, that's her slogan, that's her thing. But you didn't hear me say this, but my hood is fatherhood.
we'll get our own t-shirts and put New York edition.
We can't wear those t-shirts out of Brooklyn, okay? We can't wear them we can't go to Ohio. We can't go nowhere with those t-shirts, okay? So it's me and you, Scott. And listen, and if any of you gentlemen want one, let me know.
It's funny you said that, sis, because I just had this conversation with these gentlemen on the West Coast, and they were like, how do you bridge the gap with gangs and all of these different things, and they was coming at me with the problem, and I was like, well, there's only one hood. They was like, what's that hood? I said, you got pastors that are fathers, you got police officers that are fathers, you got gang members that are fathers. There's only one hood. That's fatherhood, period. If we focus on that, everything else out the picture, we could pretty much get some things accomplished. So yeah, that's definitely one hood, fatherhood, because once you start breaking all of that gang stuff up and everything else that's in between, the monotony, and you say, yo, we're going to focus on these children and the legacy that we're going to leave as men, yeah, fatherhood is definitely the key.
Okay, before we go to Derek, there's a question in on YouTube. Dave, you want to read the question? Because I know Derek is going to have the answer. So I'll let him close out and answer the question too.
There's one question that says we need a part 2. Was that the one?
Oh, I don't know. That was a question. Okay, we need a part 2.
But yes to that too.
Nice.
So we definitely have a part 2. So Derek, go ahead.
It's just really, it's what everyone said, and I think it's just that we're at a crucial point in our history right now. And it's just what everyone said. We just really have to work collectively. And we have to lead not with words, but with action.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Derek. So Mike, I guess we kind of got our own little charge from this, Mike, that I guess we've had to find a way to bring the band back together, as you always tell me, right?
Yeah, I think we realized some months ago that the time was ready for that. And hearing Michael speak and the close, long-standing work DYCD has done with ACS, and I know HRA is not here, but even the child support folks, where some people might think we're not down with it, we're not in touch with it. We've been talking for a long time about how to work well, specifically with dads, and a lot of other folks who are not here right now. Q is carrying a lot of water, but I'm thinking about like NGBV and the domestic violence folks and probation folks. So yeah, we have started bringing the band back together. I mentioned Affirming Fatherhood back in June 2nd. And this, as we close out June, we've been spending our month focusing on fatherhood. I'm sure we're going to continue to do that next year. I appreciate all the folks who are here today, and in the closing, some of the stuff that really has stood out for me again is when I'm thinking about being transformational. What the heck did I say? Transformational and holistic. I heard Q talking about going across systems, and there was this thing that he and Jerry pointed to a moment ago, which is like, as I heard it, it's like in order to deliver the work, there's something that work when you're delivering services, but you almost have to unlearn that. So you don't tell your story while in the middle of helping somebody who needs to tell their story. But in order to reach the next person and other people to bring them on board, we have to also tell our story. So we do have sort of double duty cut out for us. I think we're equal to it, but we can't shirk. We have to step up. So if that means a part 2, all right, we got a part 2. We're gonna do an Affirming Fatherhood part 2 also. And frankly, along with the real dads having these regular conversations, and Connect having these regular conversations, and the Barbershop being these regular conversations, we are trying to find spaces where men can talk frankly and be vulnerable and get resources and get answers to questions. So we're not done. This is one installment, part of a much larger conversation in terms of what we're up to. Do not let me forget to get that QR code back up though, because when we talk about what we need, services and conversation and building community around fatherhood around men is part of it. We want to capture that, and we want to make sure that we're capturing other needs too. So there it is. So if you are watching this, or if you're watching the archive later on after June 28th, this link is still live. Tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell a relative, tell anyone who's in New York, or click that code, and 10 minutes later you will have lifted up your voice to talking about what are the key needs in the city of New York, and DYCD will listen. And we have a number of programs that are providing targeted services in New York neighborhoods, and they will also listen and they will use this information so we can try to get it right and do an even better job going forward.
So I'm gonna turn it over to Jerry. Jerry has some news to give us, and Jerry, I'm gonna allow you to do your thing.
All right, awesome. Before I get into that, first I want to say, as always, this was just an amazing conversation with some amazing panelists. One of the things that I take away and also give back to the audience, especially for the fathers that are out there, is that your vulnerability is important, right? That we do need to hear that story, that fatherhood is important and it matters, that there is room at the table for you in that space. And when I say there's room at the table for both mom and dad, for you to be your full selves. And what does that look like? And in creating that model, when I say model, reproducing that to your other brothers and sons, so that this becomes a continuous momentum, a continuous charge that goes about across generation. We're trying to break different generational curses, different generational trauma, different things to say that not only is it okay, but it is your place to actually stand in this reinforced area. So with that, I'm grateful to hear the historical context of what that looks like, what that even meant for Juneteenth, to hear the resources that are out there that we can dive into, and then what we need to do moving forward with these new tools that we have to say, okay, wow, I didn't know I can be better. And so with that, I'm excited for the charge that everyone is giving, and at the same time, humble and grateful to be in this space with my brothers. And I say that to say, this barbershop is actually rather personal to me, because it's going to be my last barbershop, because I'll be going on to a different profession or in another job. And with that, I've learned so much in this space. I've been given so much in this space that goes beyond any type of cut. You'd be surprised how powerful, impactful words are and what resources do, and things that I was able to receive as well as to give forward. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. I have to actually lift up my personal brothers, Scott, David, Mike. I'm forever in debt. These barbershops, what started out for the pandemic to have resources and conversation, turned out to be a lifestyle thing that has gained momentum beyond any type of illness. And for that, to be a part of that movement, to be a part of this amazing space, is beyond anything I could have imagined. So just grateful, and shout out to everyone who was listening, who had a part to actually go along with this ride with me.
Well, Jerry, we're not really letting you go, as we said. We've already talked some offline, but this just this is just a see you soon. We're not even letting you take your scissors. We'll leave we'll make you leave your scissors at the barbershop. So you gotta
I gotta come back.
Gotta come back to get your clippers and your scissors. We'll keep that chair open right now. So we want to thank you for all the wisdom and guidance you've given us. We appreciate everything that you have done. We're going to, like I said, we are going to miss you, but not miss you long, because we're going to find. I'm glad you gave me your number, so I know where to call you real quickly. Okay, Jerry, we have a topic that we need you to come back in, but we wish you well.
Appreciate
And that's
it.
something that we always want to be able to uplift our brothers in this movement. Sometimes we have to move on to help to build the work also. I remember somebody telling me quite a while ago, said, sometimes you're blessed to move on, and we fight ourselves to stay where we're at, but we need to move on with that blessing to be able to help where we were, and giving the next person or next generation the opportunity to step into your shoes as you move up the ladder to help lift the waters, or lift the work that we're doing. I know, Mike, you always have that saying, and I'm gonna ask you to say it. That all working hands lift the tide, or something like that. Say it, Mike, for me.
They say a rising tide lifts all boats.
There you go.
And so I do believe in that. And what you said, that was beautiful, Scott. I thought that was really appropriate. And it's been no secret in the barbershop that Jerry and I have had a mentoring relationship. And I say a mentoring relationship because I learn from Jerry as well as Jerry learns from me. So I am personally sad to see Jerry leave DYCD, but at the same time, I'm very happy, and it's very much in the spirit of what you just said. You know, I've shared this with Jerry. I don't remember if I've said this in the barbershop, but I'll say it in the barbershop now. I've been blessed and fortunate at several jobs in my career that I've had supervisors and other people who have been looking beyond what I'm being asked to do then and to think about what I should be doing next. And so I've tried to approach my work as long as I've been here that way. And so in my role as a mentor to Jerry, I'm happy to see, resulting from both our conversations, other conversations, he's found something big to set out in front of him and to take on. And when each of us win, the team wins. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So Jerry can bring that, bring it forward, not even bring it back, bring it forward when he returns to visit the barbershop. And so I do look forward to that. Yeah. David is saying that's a JFK quote. I'm not sure where the attribution comes from. If you say it's JFK, then I'll go with that. I heard it and it stuck. Yeah.
If I could say real quick, man.
Yeah.
Jerry, all the best. The whole key word of movement is move, man. Forward, always forward. Even if you come back 2 leaps forward after that. I've seen you grown throughout these barbershops and other meetings we've been involved with, man. Keep progressing. And just as you've learned, we have learned from you. So salute, brother.
I appreciate it. I'm literally, I would love to keep this in professional capacity, but I'm not just a better professional, but I'm a better man and a better father because of all the great fathers that surround me. And again, I just want to honor everybody in the barbershop right now and say thank you. This has been an amazing ride.
Well, we always talk about our tribe in our village that we keep around us. So, you're just moving up into the eldest spot. As one elder moves away, another elder get ready to take on their shoes. So
Yes,
we want to thank everyone for tonight that are coming on and those who are watching in YouTube land. And once again, we are looking to having more of these barbershops coming up. Our next month barbershop is talking about your finances. And once again, a lot of things we must get done is our finances and get our bag together, as I said, down in the community. So make sure you tune in next month, Tuesday. I'm not sure the date off the top of my head, but we will be here at the end of the month on Tuesday, and we're going to be talking about finances. There's a lot of things we can't do if we don't have our finances right. And you're going to get
July 26th. Let's get fiscal.
Let's get fiscal. Yep.
So let's do it.
So we want to, and that is going to be kind of a part 2 because we did it last year and it was outstanding. If you want to get prepared for this one coming up, go back and look at our fiscal conversation last year, which was the same month. And
that's a good reminder. Last July we talked about strategies for getting out of debt. And then in August, we talked about strategies for beginning to build wealth. And so we want to lean more into that next month. So think of this as introducing the idea of generational wealth. What are we doing and how are we paying it forward to the next generation? We want to spend time on that next month.
And as always, we'd love to hear from you. If you ever want to send us a suggestion, you can put it you can email us at fatherhood@dycdnyc.gov. And we're taking all suggestions in. So until next time, I want to thank all my panelists, all my guests. Allison, I'm always thanking you for things you do for me. So until next time, we'll see you all in the barbershop.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
All right, Dave, you can take us out with the music. And thank you once again to our music done by Diverse.
DYCD Barbershop Talks. Fatherhood Matters. Diverse. Hey yo, these is barbershop talks where the fathers pop off. Brag about relationships and argue about sports. Every topic's a favorite, is how we plot course toward changes. It all begins with dialogue and patience. Barbershop talk, so let's chop it up, boys. Barbershop talk, so let's chop it up, boys. Barbershop talk, so let's chop it up, boys. Chop it up, boys. Chop it up, boys. It's barbershop talk, so let's chop it up, boys. It's barbershop talk, so let's chop it up, boys.